Hello, welcome back to Teacher Jeff 40K. I wanted to talk today about the Vindicare Assassins, or Assassin, I guess. I just have two of them. So, I originally had filmed this video about a week ago-ish, and then sort of thought about it, uploaded another video about the Eversor Assassin, and I wanted to do some rules, some general rules about the assassins, all four different assassin types. So I've uploaded that as well. So this one will just simply be about the Vindicare Assassins, which I really, really like using. I'm going to tell you straight off the bat, I love these guys. Now, for these guys, for the Vindicare Assassins, I do like to have two. I've had games where I had simply one of them, and they do okay on their own, but if you miss, it's so gut-wrenching when you miss. They're so reliable hitting that when you roll a 1 to either wound or to hit, it's so devastating. And of course you want to use a command point right then and there to try and get a reroll. It's just devastating when it doesn't work. So I do like to have two of these guys. Now, it's worth noting, I mentioned how the different ways you can take assassins in my overall general assassin video. So if you do want to take two, it will restrict you. You're probably going to have to take 3 assassins in general in a Vanguard detachment. But that's okay. So I've got my own little Vanguard detachment right here that I like to take, and it's 2 Vindicare Assassins and 1 Eversor. 1 Eversor can do a lot of work on his own. If you haven't already, take a look at my video on the Eversor Assassin. I love these guys. Alone, they're fantastic. You wouldn't need 2. You could take 2 and it'd be funny, but you really don't need it. These guys can really work on their own. So for the Vindicare Assassins, they are incredibly good, though. They're excellent at killing characters. They're one of the few models in general, in 40K overall, that I feel truly represent what they are supposed to show in the fluff and translate that to the tabletop incredibly well. So let's just get started. We'll have a look at the stat line, which is pretty much there's sort of a general assassin stat line, and then the Eversource and the Calexis kind of deviate from that. So the Vindicare has the sort of what I like to call the standard assassin stat line, which is very, very good. It's far from standard, but it's sort of what the other guys share. Movement 7 inches, weapon skill, ballistic skill 2+, strength and toughness 4, 5 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9, and a 6+ save. Again, like the other assassins, the 6+ save does not matter because they have a 4+ invulnerable save. If there is some technique to take away invulnerable saves, that's too bad, but your assassin's probably in a bad spot anyways if that's happening. So they got a 4+ invulnerable save, which is very cool. They are equipped with 3 things. They have an Exodus rifle, which is the most important piece of equipment that this guy has, bar none. This is one of the few times where I will say that objectively this is the best piece of equipment. Normally I go with my opinions, and there's a lot there, and of course there's so many different rules and techniques and everything in this game that a lot of it does boil down to opinion. This is his most important piece of equipment. He does have an Exodus pistol, which is cool. And it shares a lot of the same rules. And he's also got something called blind grenades, which are very neat. They're very cool. They're very useful for sort of helping him out in close combat, which is not really his game. His game is sniping people from a distance. And the Exodus rifle does this so very well. So let's have a look. The Exodus rifle, 72-inch range. Right off the bat, awesome. Heavy 1, that's fine, doesn't matter. Don't need the number of shots. He can hit on a 2+. Strength 5, minus 3 AP, D3 damage. Here's my favorite part of this weapon. Invulnerable saves cannot be taken against attacks made by this weapon. This is huge. Lots of characters, which this guy can target, by the way. Lots of characters have invulnerable saves. This guy just ignores them. And he has a minus 3 on his rifle, so that means he ignores a fat chunk of armor as well. So any character in a Terminator suit, like let's say a Terminator character, is only going to be getting a 5-up regular armor save against this guy's rifle. And that means anything with a 3-up save is only getting a 6-up save. It just the invulnerable saves do not matter for this guy. And he always wounds infantry on a 2+. So that's another one. This guy is meant to be targeting infantry characters. So we've got ignoring invulnerable saves, minus 3 on the armor, always wounds infantry on a 2+, and 72-inch range, and he hits on a 2+, which is excellent. So let's have a look at his other special rules that make his rifle just even more deadly. Deadshot. This model can target a character even if it's not the closest enemy unit. Awesome. In addition, each time unmodified wound roll of 6 is made for an attack with a ranged weapon by this model, the damage for that attack is D6. So instead of D3, when you roll a wound of 6, you get D6 damage. Excellent. Then there's even more. Like each time I keep reading into this, I think it's so ludicrous almost, because you just get all the special rules to annihilate characters. Faultless aim. If this model remains stationary in its previous movement phase, it always hits on a 2+ when firing a ranged weapon, regardless of modifiers, which is amazing. If this guy stands still, I don't care what kind of auras you have, -1 to hit, -2 to hit, he doesn't care either. So if you've been keeping tabs, he ignores invulnerable saves, he ignores firing and shooting modifiers, and he ignores 3 of armor. And he can target characters. This guy clearly has a job to do. Then, headshot. After this model has made an attack with a ranged weapon, roll a d6. If a model suffered damage from that attack but has not been slain, on a 3+, that model suffers a mortal wound. And if that model is not slain, you can roll 1 more d6. This time, that model suffers 1 mortal wound on a 4+. Keep rolling 1d6, increasing the result, so 5+, and finally 6+, to cause a mortal wound each time until the model being rolled for is slain or the roll is failed. So, again, if he hits, and let's say you get that D3 damage and you do, 2 damage to a character, the character's still got 2 or 3 wounds or something, depending on who you're shooting. This then means that with the headshot ability, you get to roll a d6. On a 3+, bang, another mortal wound. After that, on a 4+, bang, another mortal wound. 5+, and 6+. So you have potential to do 5 more mortal wounds. 4 more mortal wounds. That is a lot of damage, and it's a lot of luck involved, especially as you get to the 5+ and the 6+. But it's potential to keep damaging what you've hit, which is just fantastic. It kind of makes up for this guy only being able to shoot once. So, excellent, excellent rules. And it keeps going. There's more. Enemy models do not gain the bonus to their saving throws for being in cover against attacks made by, I butchered this one while saying it. He ignores cover when he's firing weapons. Which again, so he ignores invulnerable saves, he ignores cover, he can target characters, he ignores firing modifiers if he hasn't moved, and he ignores 3 of armor. This guy he gets through all the neat little tricks that characters may have. The one he doesn't really get through, but it's probably less reliable than most, is models who are able to ignore wounds after any saves have been made. Things like Disgustingly Resilient or the Iron Hand 6+ to ignore wounds. He doesn't ignore that. But You can deal a lot of wounds with this guy, forcing your opponent to roll a lot of dice to ignore wounds. You're probably going to tag a few through. And if you've got 2 of these guys, the next one can pick up the slack and make sure he kills that character. That's why I like to have 2 as well. It ensures that I'm killing something. And they're incredibly cheap at 85 points each. A steal. Then he's got another rule, which makes him a little more resilient. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with ranged weapons that target this model. If this model is in a terrain feature, subtract 2 instead. So he does get +1 for being in cover to his armor save, which, whatever, that's fine. He's got a 4-up invulnerable save. But what he does get is a -2 to hit inside cover. So weirdly enough, the best way to kill a Vindicare Assassin is with another Vindicare Assassin who would ignore his cover and the firing modifiers. But that's besides the point. So this guy can camp way at one end of the map with that 72-inch range rifle, be virtually untouchable to ranged weapons, and have a hell of a time sniping characters. If he doesn't move, he's always hitting on a 2+, regardless of modifiers. He's ignoring cover. He doesn't care if there are any invulnerable saves. And he ignores a bunch of armor. He also will always hit on a 2+. Amazing. So this guy's fantastic with his rifle. He's got a couple of other weapons which do really help him out. The Exodus pistol, it's worth noting the Exodus pistol has a strength 4, -3 AP, D3 damage. So it's almost as strong as the rifle. It's got 12-inch range. It is a pistol. And of course, as a pistol, it can be fired in close combat, which is something worthy of note. It also ignores invulnerable saves, which is incredible. And it wounds infantry on a 2+, just like his rifle. So it is worth noting that the pistol is very good in this regard, and it does work with a couple of his other abilities. So the headshot ability that allows you to keep rolling for mortal wounds, it does specifically say that it's an attack with a ranged weapon. A pistol is a ranged weapon, so if for some reason you're firing a pistol in close combat, you can continue to deal mortal wounds with that pistol shot. And it also works with the faultless aim, which is where if he remains stationary, but that doesn't really matter because, in some circumstances, I think it might have an effect if you're in close combat and you're firing a pistol for some reason, but it's worthy of note that his pistol is very usable in a lot of scenarios. So if for some reason you cannot use the rifle, you're tied up in combat, something like that, the pistol is very, very strong as well. But again, it's one shot, but potentially incredibly damaging shot. And then he's got something called blind grenades. Blind grenades, again, are useful at ensuring that he doesn't have too much of a problem in close combat. It's not going to save you, but it's going to help you a lot. So what this does is it has no strength, AP, or damage characteristic, but it's a 12-inch range. That's really important because 12 inches is the maximum range from which a charge can be declared. So that in itself tells you something. It tells you that this is basically an anti-charge grenade. You can overwatch with this grenade at 12 inches, which means any charge you can use this grenade. Of course, if you're out of line of sight, you're out of luck. But it's grenade D6 too, which means you have quite a few chances to get a hit in Overwatch. So it doesn't inflict any damage and don't make any wound rolls for it. Instead, if a unit is hit by any blind grenades, so any of those D6 shots, if they actually hit, subtract 1 from all hit rolls for attacks made by this unit until the end of the turn. Very useful. So it's a flashbang. Basically, it causes the enemy unit to be less effective in whatever they're doing, whether that be shooting or close combat. It simply says -1 or subtract 1 from all hit rolls. So hit rolls in melee and in shooting, which is great. So that also is worthy of note, is that it doesn't simply blind them to the Vindicare Assassin, it blinds them in general, which means that other units in your army, this will help them out as well, meaning that that unit that got hit by the blind grenade is a -1 to hit with all its attacks against everything. So not simply the Vindicare Assassin. So this guy is wonderful at shooting things. Little bits of advice for fielding him: put him up in a tower somewhere. It's where he belongs. Keep him as far away from any potential close combat scenarios. You don't want this guy getting tied up even for a turn, because he is so potentially deadly to characters. Excellent stuff. So I like to have two of them. Characters are incredibly. I mean, they seem, it's one of those things that is just in every army. Like sometimes, like if you have a unit that can wound vehicles better, you may have trouble going up against Tyranids, right? Characters are everywhere, and characters have multiple wounds. Some of them cannot be targeted by some of your units. Some of them can, of course, and he'll do great against those. I mean, if you got something that's got 10 or more wounds, he'll still snipe them, no problem, and deal a chunk of wounds, especially if they're infantry. Strength 5 is pretty good, though, if in case you're targeting a monster. You may not be wounding him as much as you want to, but you still have a high chance of doing that. This guy is basically meant for tagging, characters with the infantry keyword that have invulnerable saves or hide in cover or find ways of basically not being targeted. This guy will find him, and this guy will shoot him. He does have, like the other assassins do, a couple of unique stratagems, simply or only for the Vindicare Assassin. One of them allows him to deal a little damage to vehicles, which is kind of nice. But unless they're, like, he should be targeting characters. You should have other units that deal with vehicles in your army. But if you don't, or, you've had your anti-heavy, a lot of your anti-heavy stuff dealt with in your army, and this guy's left alone, he can deal some quick damage to a vehicle. So for 1 CP, it's called a turbo penetrator round. Stratagem is used in your shooting phase after an attack made with an Exodus pistol or rifle. So he can use a turbo penetrator round with either his pistol or his rifle. Just keep that in mind. And he scores a hit against a target that is either a vehicle or a monster. So it's not simply for vehicles, it's monsters as well. Do not make a wound roll for that attack. Instead, that hit inflicts D3 mortal wounds on the target. If the stratagem is used, then the headshot ability does not apply to that attack. So that's worthy of noting. You can't roll again the 3+, the 4+, the 5+, the 6+ to try to get additional mortal wounds with this stratagem. Doesn't work. But you're going to get D3 mortal wounds. It's great for, let's say a bunch of characters are dead. There's either he can't see other characters, or there are none left and there's only infantry. He can tag a few wounds off of a vehicle or a monster. So late game, this can be really helpful. If you've got a monster that's still alive with a few wounds, you can snipe him, get him out of the way, and have the other parts of your army focus on other things. And then he's got another stratagem called double kill, and it's pretty straightforward. In your shooting phase, after a Vindicare Assassin from your army shoots, he can shoot an additional time, but it must be at a different target. That's the key here. So, hence double kill. You can fire at one thing and then fire at another thing for one command point. This can be useful if one of your Vindicare Assassins either has been removed, or if you've only brought one, he takes out a character and you want to take out another character. Now, for the purposes of this stratagem, let's say you fire at one character but don't kill him. You can still use this stratagem, but you must fire at a different character. This simply means that you'll be knocking wounds off one character and knocking wounds off another, or potentially killing another. So it can be helpful to up this guy's damage per turn, which is very, very nice. I think this assassin, honestly, like having looked at the other ones, having fielded them, is one of the best at his job anyways. His job is targeting characters from afar, and he does it so well. He hits well. He ignores so many different ways of shielding characters. So let's go through those just one more time. I mean, I keep going through these, and it's such a wish list. It's amazing. He ignores cover. He can target characters. He ignores 3 of armor, so -3 AP. He ignores invulnerable saves just completely. And he ignores any firing modifiers, any to hit modifiers, if he stays still. Incredible. He has a 72-inch range, which means he's pretty much hitting anything from anywhere on the board. I don't know, is that minus like the back ass corner to the other back ass corner? Like if you go diagonally across, is that still 72 inches? I think it might be just out of range. But you're hitting pretty much everything on the field, which is absolutely excellent. So give him a great vantage point. This guy, it's very cool. He in game, he acts like a sniper. You want to get him into a good vantage point with a good field of view. And if he's in a tower, that's where you want him. You want him in a tower where he can see everything. I was fortunate enough years ago to pick up the models for these guys. These are the old Vindicare models. So this one I've had to do a few alterations on. I lost some pieces a while back, so I used a Tau pulse rifle and added some pieces to make it look more, I don't know, snipery. But the new models are quite expensive. I mentioned this earlier in another video. They're about 37 bucks Canadian, which means they're probably about 30 US. And man, they're really expensive for one model. I know they're really nice, very, very nice, but they're small. And $37 is very, very steep for one model. So if you can find a way you can try and convert them. A couple of ideas, like I mentioned, I've got this Tau pulse rifle arm that I've converted quite a bit. For the body, I would recommend parts from a Tempestus Scion kit. They look very much like assassins. You're going to have to do a little bit of cutting, but you know, the face mask looks good. The pieces of armor, it's not too much armor. He looks a little more slick. For him to be able to get in and out of different places. It's not too bulky. You could get away with a Tempestus Scion with some customized pieces. Even the Hotshot lasgun with its scope would look really good. I would just recommend making some modifications to that. So you could do that. I'm thinking of other bits. Probably some Eldar bits as well. They look pretty sleek. You'd be able to do some customizations there as well. So there are a lot of ways around getting one of these models. And the same goes for all the other assassins. Like I mentioned this in my Eversor video. My Eversor is scratch built. I took pieces, servo skull for the head. This is part of a Space Marine backpack, a little Tau. I think that's partially a marker light or something. It's either a marker light or an antenna, an aerial. This is part of a combi grav. I gave him a melta-bomb because that's what he's got, and I think that's an Imperial Guard arm. I put a pistol here because he's got a pistol, and then a power sword with a Space Marine arm here. And then legs and body are Tau. So you can find a way with your bits. Go through your bits. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find certain ways to put together your own assassins. And again, this goes for all of them. You should be able to find ways, as long as you are remaining WYSIWYG, your opponent shouldn't care. You should be able to, as long as you represent what the equipment the model has, shouldn't have a problem, honestly. So with a Vindicare, give him a rifle, make sure it looks like he's got a pistol somewhere and some sort of grenade of some kind, and you should be able to do it. Anyhow, have you guys fielded assassins? I'm going to go over the other two assassins in a bit as well, the Calidus and the Calexis assassins. But I'd like to know what you guys have done with Vindicare assassins. So please let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.